Hey everyone, welcome back to another YI vid. Today we're having a look at one of the ones that has genuinely captured my cold, gnarled little heart in the form of Exoprimal from Capcom. This is part of Capcom's ongoing love affair with all things dinosaur murder related, and Exoprimal certainly turns that up to Dynasty Warriors levels with the sheer number of dinosaurs that get blown away by many a power-armoured warrior. The premise alone is completely ridiculous in Exoprimal. The story is a nonsensical ramble about insane AIs, corporate greed, strange time looping effects, multi-dimensions, and dinosaurs. Basically, you make a character in a very, and I mean very bare-bones character creator. This is probably one of the lowest priority character creation suites I've ever seen. A handful of faces, a handful of hairs, and a handful of colours for your pilot suit, and literally that's it. And this is a character, by the way, that you will see at the end of every single round, and will be involved in every single cutscene during the story. And it is kind of surprising that they didn't at least put a little bit of effort, even going to the length of doing, like, say, the Monster Hunter level of character create. It was pretty bare bones. I've got to say, I was kind of surprised about that. But you create your character. They all go by the name of Ace. They are a voiceless protagonist. Doesn't really matter because the story is, as I said, largely kind of wacky, superfluous, and not all that deep, to be honest. I mean, when you really drill down into it, the main meat of the game is the dinosaur slaying, essentially. And you are part of a crew of people who end up going to a place called Bikitoa Island. An unfortunate name. It just doesn't sound like the kind of place like, oh, you know, that sort of screams like, oh, site of unprecedented tragic events that killed tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and you know where location of insane AI is that's causing dinosaurs to now appear out of random portals across the planet. It's like, oh, we've got to go to the mysterious Bikitoa. But yeah, you go to this place, you get stranded there, and then insane AI called Leviathan has decided that everyone who is trapped in this island, across all time streams, essentially, are all now stuck in its war games. And those war games involve pitting two teams of 5 players against each other in basically what amount to time attack challenges. Exoprimal as a game is a third-person hybrid of a few different themes. There's a little bit of hero shooter in there, with every exosuit, as it's called, having a different kind of character, basically, with their own unique abilities and their role on the field. There are several attack, a few tanks, and a few support classes, basically. And each one, as I said, has their own kind of style of performing their roles. The starting one, for instance, is Deadeye, who's a pretty straightforward shooter, uses a assault rifle, they have a grenade launcher attachment, they can run fairly quickly, they've got a decent amount of armor and health, but they lack any kind of really showy abilities. Every class has an ultimate ability that charges up the more you do damage. You can see where the hero shooter influences come in. But when I say hero shooter, I know that brings to mind things like Overwatch and stuff. It really isn't that kind of game. And I know that hero shooters these days can scare people off and make them think it's like, you know, that kind of product. And if they don't like it, then they're going to run away from it. It really isn't. It's just that's sort of part of this sort of layer of things. But as I said, it's like a time attack, third-person action shooter that's all about constantly adjusting to what's happening. So like changing your suits on the fly. Being able to communicate with friends if you're playing as a group, or with the other players that you're with, to sort of suggest different roles that people should be switching around to, changing healers, changing tanks, changing attack characters, depending on the map, depending on what the objectives are, because as you start, sorry, you will move to the same location. Both teams are supposedly on on different time frames, but acting against each other at the same time, thanks to Leviathan. And essentially you're both trying to complete the same objective at the same time. This could be kill several hundred raptors, or it could be things like you have to kill a certain number of special dinosaurs. Some of them are quite large, things like Triceratops, Stegosaurus, T-Rexes, Carnotaurus, that kind of thing, and Ankylosaurs. And you will have to, utilize your team's abilities to their best to achieve victory in each stage as quickly as possible. And when you complete a certain number, you go to the final stage. And as I said, this is all time attack. You can do so well that you can run ahead of the other team. There are a few balancing mechanics in there. Leviathan is generous enough that if you're on the slowest team, as he will say, you will be granted what's called a Dominator a bit early in the match, which is an ability for one of your teammates to jump into the enemy team's time stream as a dinosaur. Usually it's a Carnotaurus, but sometimes it can be a T-Rex. And you then engage in a little bit of PvP, where you're running around as a dino while they're trying to complete their objective, and basically just trying to munch as many of them as possible to stop them from completing their objective, and giving your team time to catch up. Now, the twist is that the team that are doing better later on will get their own Dominator, so you have to be prepared for when they invade your world. And basically, it's complete all the objectives, and if you do it, both of you can complete the objectives, and it doesn't matter, there's no winner, no loser, no first place, second place, like that. It's just, you're both trying to complete the mission. It's just, obviously, if you can slow them down a bit, it gives you a better chance of being able to complete it in time. That kind of thing. Or you can just be a right bastard and just end things for them and ruin it for them very quickly. And what can end up happening is two modes of play, and this is a thing that turned some people off, and that was the PvP aspect, because a lot of people liked the initial stages of the time attack thing, but were immediately worried about having to engage in PvP, i.e. there are several endgame sets of scenarios where they play exactly as they say. You will be trying to complete an objective, and then at some point you will have to fight the other players, and then that's where the competitive element sort of turns into an actual PvP shooter, with dinosaurs still running around. And it can get kind of thrilling and get a bit hectic, and it's certainly where I think some of the units' designs were coming in for the exosuits, being better at killing players, some of them, than killing dinosaurs or that kind of thing. And this is a mode that in testing Capcom were very aware of when there was a lot of feedback, and they went, okay, fair enough, we'll have a PvE mode as well. Now, PvE mode basically turns the end scenario of any mission into another time attack. Sometimes there'll be a few slight differences where you might get a carnage mode activated, where there's just like a ridiculous number of dinosaurs attacking you, and it's just trying to kill a certain number before the other team does, kind of thing. You still get the Dominators and all that, so there's still a light bit of PvP in there with the Dominators, but you don't have to fight the other team at the end. So it's a nice touch. And now there's even, at launch, there was an ability where you could set it to just find a match for you, and it could be PvP, it could be PvE, you get a slight XP bonus. So it's pretty rinse repeat. Matches are snappy, they take about 10-15 minutes each round to complete. You can get into games fairly quickly. As I said, you can join with other friends if it's on Steam or on Xbox or PlayStation, and there's cross-platform play. Sadly, at the moment, Game Pass and Steam users can't play together, and I believe that covers across all the PC platforms for some reason, because that just always is. But yes, Exoprimal is available if you have a Game Pass subscription, so you can try it out for yourself, arguably for free, sort of, that kind of. It's not the biggest game to download, and it doesn't take that long to get into. So unlocks for the game are handled via level. The more you play, the more you level up, the more suits you will unlock every so many levels along on the track. And having all of them does give you access to quite a few varied playstyles. As I said earlier, with Deadeye, for instance, is a kind of assault rifle user, but then you've got Barrage, who is a sort of crowd control type who fires incendiary grenades and has a few kind of abilities that are all based around being able to deny access to a location without damaging the enemy, without causing the enemies to take damage. Zephyr is a martial arts sort of Chinese tonfa wielding suit that gets in close, is able to hit multiple smaller dinosaurs, send them flying in clumps like that. You've got Vigilance, who's a sniper type unit, capable of being able to do high damage to single targets, but is very vulnerable to being attacked at close range. And then you've got like your sort of tank suits in there as well, who are the types that can... You've got one that has a shield, a bit like Reinhardt, for instance, but like one of his hands becomes massive and he can punch enemies away, do fairly good damage. Krieger, who can create shields and has a minigun that can just spray and pray everywhere. It looks fantastic when you're going through with like lock-on missiles and stuff. And then you've got Murasame, who's just like a big, basically a giant samurai with a massive katana who just like slices through everything. And then you got your healer suits, who are the ones like Skywave, who can fly around and throw bolts of energy that damage enemies and heal friendlies nearby, and can freeze time or create vortexes. You've got Witch Doctor, who's capable of being able to heal everybody in an area around him, in a healing field, or target specific friendlies, and like give them like a massive health boost if they need it in a pinch. And then you've got my favourite, Nimbus, who's like a kind of jet set radio skater girl type one with dual pistols that can switch to being dual healing pistols instead, so she can like heal the team and then like shoot and do big damage with pistols. It's definitely interesting. They've come up with a lot of varied skill types in there, and there's definitely going to be a suit or two that are your go-to ones. As I said, you can switch on the fly during a mission. It really doesn't matter what you start with. You can always change it immediately. And there's just a slight cooldown when you're in a mission itself to jump into a different suit. So you just make sure you switch between. Don't do it during a battle, you'll get eaten very quickly. So yeah, as I said, the story will kind of continue on as you complete missions, and then you get little story snippets and stuff like that, cutscenes that will come in. And you'll get boss encounters as well. The boss encounters are really fun. They can actually be genuinely challenging as well, where those are missions that bring all 10 players together in a cooperative scenario, fighting gigantic, like, mutated dinosaurs, just massive waves of challenging enemies, or unique boss encounters as well, right up to the end of the story, which is in itself is quite an endurance test for the final battle. And then once you've done that, you unlock like the Savage Gauntlet mode, which is one where a team of 5 just try to complete a mission as quickly as possible. It plays into the time attack mode of like this idea of trying to have the most competent, efficient team set up to do the mission as quickly as possible to get into that like top 20% of players who've completed at a certain speed, and they give rewards for those. And so far, it's pretty fun. I mean, I will admit that there's probably a few issues for those people who don't like PvP that are at least, is it 2 occasions? Yes, I think there is. There's the tutorial one. The very first time you play, you will definitely have to do a PvP mission. There's just no way around that. And there's one story mission that will force you into a PvP scenario at the end for a different game type. But those are the only times where it's forced, and honestly, win or lose really doesn't matter. It doesn't. You can just throw the match if you're really that bothered about having to fight other players for like a minute or so. But honestly, I wouldn't allow that to tarnish your view of what the game is, or whether you should play it or not, because all the rest of the time you will not have to bother with PvP, and it's really, really fun. The only biggest holdback of the whole thing of why you would have to consider whether you would purchase this game or not is the price, because they're charging full price. Like, we're talking, you know, base Starfield price of £60 over here, which is what, like $80, $70, something like that. They're going big, and at the moment the game is exceedingly fun, and it looks really nice, and there's definitely a lot of replayability in there because it's quick, it's easy to get into and do matches. But that price tag, you really have to want to play a lot of that kind of game, or, you know, with a friend or two, to really justify the price at the moment. I think that's Capcom's biggest misstep with the whole thing, because outside of that, the game runs brilliantly. Out of all the matches I've played, I've not had a single graphical issue, a glitch, a crash, or any kind of performance issues. The game runs really, really well. Even when it's dropping thousands of raptors out of a portal, it just runs perfectly smooth. It doesn't ramp up any of the fans on my PC. It just runs great, and as I said, it looks good to boot. And this this single price point issue is the biggest holding point for a few people that I know, that they would buy a copy on Steam, but they really don't want to pay that kind of money. If this thing had been, like, in the equivalent of pounds, about 35 to 40, might have been an easy pickup for a lot of people, but at this current price, yeah, it's sad to say that waiting for a small sale is definitely a big plus for this game. If you're on Game Pass, as I said, you can play it, and you can play it with other people on Game Pass, obviously, if you have other friends on there, which might, at the moment, be the best option if you want to check out the game. If you have the disposable income, or you just really, really like the premise of it, by all means, pick it up, because I think supporting it sends a message for Capcom to hopefully continue to support the game for much longer. There is still a lot of stuff to come. They are doing other variants of the suits that are in the game. They're called the alpha variants, and there's another group called the beta variants. And they aren't just like reskins or whatever, they completely change the way each suit works, from new weapons that play differently to new abilities and stuff like that. So there's more coming in that respect. There's more map types coming. I think there's new dinosaurs coming. There's a couple of like collaboration events where they're doing a Street Fighter one, which by the looks of it will give you a Ryu Exo Fighter suit. And there's a Monster Hunter collaboration, which I assume will bring in a new like boss type, or possibly a few new enemy types to encounter from the Monster Hunter franchise, and no doubt some like visuals and cosmetics and stuff for your exosuits. And yeah, overall it's just they've definitely got plans for where they want to take it, and no doubt there will probably be more exosuits added as they go along. And yeah, it does look great. It's just such an easy game to pick up and play. I mean, there's even a reason to just keep playing, because every suit has a track of items that unlock as you level them up, and those are things that will get you modifiers. There are generic kind of ones that make you reload quicker and like reduce incoming damage and stuff like that, but then there are more role-specific ones, two for each of the abilities. So ones that will focus on their primary weapon that might alter like how quickly they charge up certain abilities, or being able to do more damage on average, to stuff that sort of modifies certain like dodge abilities, will instantly reload your weapon when you dodge, for instance, or like for Deadeye, one of them will flatten the trajectory of the grenade launcher so it travels further in a straight line, making it more accurate at long ranges, that kind of thing. So playing the suits more unlocks more stuff. And then there's like, for people who like to sort of work toward getting kind of accolades, which are little badges for your profile, you know, playing certain suits and scoring high number of points in a mission will upgrade badge more and more, so you can get like, you know, like the top rank badge. And there's badges for everything from like killing other players when using a Dominator, to killing like X number of dinosaurs, leveling up your suits a certain number of times, getting high scores using certain abilities. So there's a lot to keep coming back to as well, to continue to unlock more of these higher rank accolades. But yeah, that's Exoprimal, and I recommend it. I really do. It's just with that caveat about the price. As I said, performance-wise, the game has run really well. It's not too big on the old hard drive. It's about 40 odd gig. It's got decent voice work. The only thing I really touched on is the story, I suppose, and as I said, if you're really, really into the narrative, there is a big chunk of voice acting there, but the characters all feel a bit kind of derivative and trite. They're not the type that you're going to remember anytime soon. Once you've finished it, you're not really ever going to think back to those characters and go, oh, I hope they continue their story. They're just kind of there. Especially there's one called Majesty, who is voiced in the most, you know, moose and squirrel kind of like Russian voice I've ever heard. Like the voice direction literally was just, I'll just do the most like kind of stereotypical like Russian voice that you can think of for this woman, and like everything is like, my grandmother once told me. It's that kind of, that level of doing, you know, a Russian character over the whole thing. There's a Jamaican guy in there who just throws out terms like bombaras and rasclot every 3 seconds. Like his entire character is dictated on him being a large, bald, black fella who just is like a walking stereotype the whole way. And there's an Australian dude who is actually, I think he's playing against, he plays against Stereotype, which I suppose is the only one who doesn't. And then there's Ace, which is your character who's just the silent mug who just walks around doing exercises in the background on occasion. As I said, it's not like the most memorable story. It's just a device to explain just what the fuck is going on in Exoprimal overall. So yeah, that's it. I do recommend it though. Really fun game, and yeah, if you got the chance to check it out, please do. And otherwise, have a good day. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you next time. So yeah, bye.